Hi guys, Dave Waring here again with digitalbrainbase.com. And today I want to share a discussion I had with my developer Beck, where we discuss the memory components of AI systems and how they apply to digital brain systems like Open WebUI. We go into context windows, retrieval augmented generation, summarization, and other techniques for handling memory, and how that might apply to Open WebUI. If you have questions on anything we discuss here or advice on things we may have missed, I'd love it if you post them in the comments section below. Now, on to the discussion.
So, um, let's just talk about just memory in general for a minute. So, so the main memory function of these large language models is the context window right now, correct? And so basically, every time you do a chat, it sends the whole thing back to the large language model, so it has all the context. And so would it be accurate to say that, okay, if you have 100,000 token context window and you paste 100,000 tokens worth of words in, then you're not going to be able to do very much with that because it's going to be trying to feed it back into the thing every time. Would that be accurate or no?
Say again, if you have 100,000 context window and how many tokens? Sorry, how many tokens conversation history?
Let's just say let's say you use the entire, let's say you paste 100,000, let's say you paste 99,000 tokens worth of context into the chat, right? So a couple books or something, right? Then I'm not going to be able to do very much chatting with that context
Yeah.
because very quickly I'm going to use up the next 1,000 tokens and then it's going to start freezing up, etc. Right?
Yes. 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 Correct.
So it's not really just like, oh, you can, do research on 1,000 tokens or whatever. Like you have to have enough context window for this thing to be going back and forth. And then also, I guess, once you start talking about scaling systems, et cetera, that's going to get very costly because you're using a lot of power of the model for that context window. So it's not just what is it capable of, but it's also like how much is that going to cost?
Yes. So
So I would say that that is a pretty inefficient way to manage memory, similar to if we're talking about a digital brain. Every time you ask a new question or say something new in the conversation, you have to like look at everything else that's been said up to that point in that chat history, right?
this is the easiest way how it works. MemGPT, I think I explained this to you last week. So there are many, and this is now, I think it's like standard. So everyone is doing this, solving this issue, like of
Well,
having long.
wait a minute. Before we get on to solving this issue, I just want to make
Yes.
sure I understand
Ah,
the
yes.
issue,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So, so is that the issue, or is there something that I'm missing with the context window and just using the context window?
Yes. Yes. That's the issue.
Okay. All right. So I'm assuming we're not the only people that are having this issue, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so there's people working on solving this issue, correct? Okay, so this is what you were about to say. Let's go into what are people doing to try, forget about MemGPT for a minute unless it's relevant. Just like what are the different things people are doing to try and solve this issue?
People are doing the same thing what MemGPT does. People are doing the same thing what MemGPT does. Uh, so, okay, MemGPT, there is two problems here. MemGPT solves two problems. First, this context window, and second one, it's designed for memory. So it extracts some of the information from your inputs. This is what MemGPT does. But we're talking now about the first issue, which is solving this. If you have a long conversation history which doesn't fit into a context window, what to do, right? This is what we are talking about. So how people solving this? They're building this like algorithms, or yes, we can say functions Let's say if you interact with one chatbot or one assistant and you have now 10 messages. This function, as soon as you have 10 messages, it will convert these 10 messages into one summary. It will delete these 10 messages and instead generate one summary for these 10 messages. So now you are starting from, if you ask again, AI still has context, but now it's much, much less tokens because it's only summary of this previous conversation. And then when you have next 10 questions, it will generate the second summary. Then
Right.
when you
And
have
this is
questions,
kind of how a human brain works, right? It's like I'm not when I'm having a conversation with you, I'm not thinking about every single thing we've ever said together. I have a summary in my mind of kind of the general things that we've been discussing, and that's how I build familiarity and context around the conversation without having to remember every single word that's ever been said between us.
yes, yes. And then, as you can see, there is another limit here because you keep generating summaries for every 10 messages, right? And soon, if you're just one person who is continuing conversation in the same thread, as soon you will hit this point when your summaries are long enough, they won't fit into this context window. Some people doing second step there. So when you have 10 summaries, they will generate one summary for these 10 summaries. So this is what they're doing. So it's like a nested loop inside of solving these issues. The alternative way for that, instead of providing whole conversation history, they are doing this. Okay, they are storing all conversation history and indexing as vectors in your database, and then every time you ask a question, is going to search for the most relevant content from your previous chats, and then from there they will use like 10 or 15 chats as context.
Okay, so sorry, my excavator was calling me. Say that last piece one more time. So I got you summarize, right, every 10 messages, then you summarize the 10 summaries. What's the next step after that?
That's like it's still like in the long run, I think it doesn't solve this issue because you might have come and to the point where you have like very long summaries. I mean, very like your summaries will take much tokens like context window, right? So they're doing this generating summaries for summaries.
Right. It seems like a very inefficient way to that's because let's just relate it back to a brain, right? Because this keeps working for me as an analogy. Um, let's say we're talking about, AI stuff here, but then I go and talk to my wife about our kids, and like all those summaries are it's like it's summarizing everything that's ever been said, within this window, right? That would be one issue I could see with this in terms of I don't think about you and AI conversations when I'm talking to my wife about my kids. Okay, so that would be one thing. The other thing would be that I think of right away with my use case is for my food diary and my to-do list, I don't even give a shit what I said a month ago. You know what I mean? I just wanted to remember and update my to-do list, and it really only needs like the last few pieces of conversation in order to do that.
Okay, so in yes, you're right. So this is why you create like in ChatGPT or any this Open WebUI interface, you create new chat for every like different topic, right? When you chat with conversation with this chat with your assistant. For example,
I
you have
do
to do
that
this.
definitely in Open WebUI now. I wasn't really having to do it as much in ChatGPT because it just sort of remembered between chats, but Open WebUI has no memory between chats.
Okay, but usually, like for example, uh, when this is what's my experience and what other people been telling. When you create new chat, and in ChatGPT interface, and you're talking about certain topic, for example, about writing, how to write blog posts, for example, and you started this conversation, and you have now 6-7 messages which are talking only about blog posts, generating blog posts. Now, if I continue this conversation, the same conversation, and I ask something else, like related maybe to writing an article or writing a book, for example, even though it seems like same topic, because of previous conversation history, I will get different outputs. Because of this conversation history, because I talk about blog post articles. When I start fresh, like new chat, and ask the same question, now please help me write a book, for example, I'll get much better outputs because it's clean. There is no conversation history to that. Or if I have conversation history which related to writing a book, then also I'll get much better outputs. That's why we create new, like for every new topic that you discuss with AI, it's even with ChatGPT now, it's a limitation of these LLM models. They're not much intelligent yet because they don't understand the meanings of these words. They understand only the tokens and the relevance between them, but they don't understand the actual meaning of these words. So my point here is, wait.
Starting new chats every time.
Yes, starting new chats, but for you, when you say it's your to-do list, it's basically one topic, right? It's always to-do list. Like you're not asking like you're chatting about to-do list and then you're giving something else, like another instruction, another task. You're not doing that, right?
Correct. I would like to be able to do that, but I'm not doing that because it doesn't work at all then. So again, what I'm thinking about in terms of the end state here is if I have an expert assistant that knows everything, like I don't need to start different chat window. I could just talk to that person in a chat window and it automatically knows what I'm talking about. But that's fine. If it does a really good job within, separate chats, like that's not the end of the world right now. In fact, I think that for most people, having defined use cases within each chat is actually better right now because it gives them something to do with it instead of just like a blank slate. Um, yeah, so having different chats is fine, and I understand that that helps because the context is all around the same thing.
Yes.
Okay, so going back to the different methods of dealing with this. One method is it just feeds everything, every single thing you've ever said in that chat window back to the model with every message. Very inefficient, right? Even if you can do that with like a 10 million token context window, that's going to get very expensive very fast, and you're just wasting a lot of resources. So the next simplest thing is to summarize every 10 messages, right? And only feed the summary. And then the next simplest thing beyond that is to summarize the summaries. Correct?
Yes.
What's the next level above that?
There is no next level. Some people also do, instead of generating the summaries, because with generating summaries, there is also a limit. Like you hit the same issue there. You will have your summaries will take your all context window. It's the same thing, right? You're just delaying this until you hit this context window. Some people do, they don't care about this stuff. They just assume that they always get the latest 10 messages from your conversation history. It's not all. If you have 1,000 conversation history, probably you don't want all of them because you asked first conversation maybe 1 month ago. First message 1 month ago, and they're only getting the last 10 messages. I mean, 10, it's just a number. It can be 10, 15, 20. But they get the most recent messages from your conversation, and it's always fixed number. Like it's 10, 15, 20, 50. And that's it. And they don't care about your how many messages you have in your conversation. They just get the most recent ones and pass it as context.
Okay, so we've got full context, everything that's in the chat. We've got 10 summaries and 10 summaries of summaries, and then we've got just give me the last 10 messages and forget everything else. Okay. How hard is it to do the just give me the last 10 messages and forget everything else?
I mean, within Open WebUI, within Open WebUI, I'll have to update their backend. This is not within, we cannot do this with tools.
Okay. So, so, um, where does RAG come into play?
Okay, so we discussed now about first issue. The first issue is not related to memory. The first issue is related to context window, fitting your conversation history into context window. This is the first issue. It's not about memory. Memory is the thing that you can ask from your. It should recall your questions or from 1 month ago, 2 months ago, 1 year ago. This is the memory thing, right? And it should be
Well,
also.
yes, that's true, Beck, but like that's Nirvana, right? Nirvana is it remembers everything about me for all time, right? Okay, well, there's step towards that. And it's like, okay, well, what's the first step? I think the first step is it does a good job of remembering and recalling specific things related to the conversation that I'm having with it right that moment, right? And that could be just for the last month or whatever, something, because right now it's pretty bad at this.
No, yes, but I think time here is irrelevant. It should be. It doesn't matter if you ask it 1 hour ago, 1 second ago, or 1 month ago. Time irrelevant. It should remember the thing that you are talking about. It could be any topic, right? That's the thing. The time here is irrelevant. It just should remember that maybe you talked about some questions, say about this input before, or if it's new. But anyway, it should remember, and time is irrelevant. So, and for this one, everyone is doing what MemGPT is doing. So the same thing, converting. Some people do, okay, two types. Some people do this RAG solution here. Some people do extracting the most like valuable pieces, and that works like and the pieces I mean from text, pieces from your conversation, and they put them in this memory file. I call it file, but it's basically like all one big text of all the thing. It's not separated. Like if it's extracted your name, they will put it in one file. If your age, they will put in another file. No, it's all in one file. I mean, all in one text. And then this text always they feed this into a system prompt. So AI has always context about your memory list. Like I don't know, memory text, we can call it
Is
like
it
this.
feeding the whole thing in, or is there something that sits in between there that's only feeding the relevant pieces in?
All thing. They control like how many. Of course, they control the size of this memory.
Okay, because I thought RAG was, smart enough to kind of recognize it's like I've got this whole database full of information. Right now, I'm having a conversation about this one piece of information, and this is the information that I need to grab from this giant database of information.
Yes, this is another way of doing this.
Well,
So
why would that to me seems so much better than anything else we've said.
adding like it's adding extra latency to this to because you are okay.
So it's slower.
Yes, it's slower because you are asking like you wouldn't ask like one question and then you will come back and ask again another question in 10 minutes, then you will not notice this latency. But if you are having conversation, it will annoy you, right? If for every message is going to query your knowledge base for the most relevant context for your message and answer your back based on those previous chats.
Okay. Is that the only downside?
Yes.
So we can feed every single chat that I've ever had into my knowledge base, and then we can
Yes.
query it with RAG. Okay.
Some
Uh,
people filter on that. Like, yes, every new, like you type something, you hit enter, we can automatically index that, convert them into vectors and store them in vector store. And all your chats, doesn't matter, all your inputs will be indexed in vector store. Some people put filters in here, like they're not putting directly all your inputs into vector store. Like for example, we don't have to index hello, how are you? My name is something like this, or I don't know, generate a to-do list. We don't have to index like this things, right? We have to index only the more like some valuable information. Some people put filters here, but technically this is right what you're saying. We put all messages in chat like we index them, convert them in vectors, and then we search for the most relevant chats from this table and use them as context.
okay. So let's talk about how this works. So there's a large language model in between the RAG database and my chat window, right? Like there's a model that's handling, like I'm looking at this chat and then I'm searching and querying this database of information based on what this chat is about, right?
Wait, so LLM, what's the LLM part there?
So
What LLM does?
my guess is there's two LLMs, right? So there's the LLM that I'm chatting with, and then there's the LLM that sits between the RAG database that we're retrieving stuff from and my chat. Well, let me ask the question another way. When I'm chatting and I've got RAG enabled, how does it know what information to pull into the chat that I'm having for context?
Okay. Let's say I have podcast data in my knowledge base, right? And I index them. I index every podcast. I mean, when I say index, I mean I converted all my transcript from my podcast episodes into embeddings, and I put them in this vector store, and they're ready, right? And then I want to chat about these podcast episodes. And my question will be like, for example, what are like, who was the guest on episode and number like this, right? And because I created the tool that's going to search for the most relevant content from this podcast data, which is in vector store, based on my input, right? It's going to first generate the search query. And yes, generating search query will be done by the same LLM that's going to answer my question. Because this LLM has context, this LLM has this tool that's, and the task, the job of this tool is to search for the most relevant content. So this LLM generates the search query. If my input will be who was the guest on episode number 55, it can generate, possibly based on my description of this tool, it can generate the search query will be episode 55, not the whole input that I provided. It's going to generate maybe this input, episode 55, or it's going to search for the guest name. So it's like search query. And then this search query will feed into this search tool. It will do the job of searching for the most relevant content. Send this back. Whatever was returned from this search it will return this back to LLM. And then LLM now has my input, my original input, who was the guest on episode 55. Then it also has the response from this tool, whatever format it is, like text or JSON file. It also has this, and it also has the system prompt. And then it's going to generate my answer. But that's how it works.
Okay, so we have this vector store, this database where all of our chats are going into. And every time we have a chat, it's creating an embedding of it and it's feeding it into this database. Yes?
Yes.
That's step one.
What?
Okay, so the data, that vector store is the storage memory component of the digital brain, right?
That's basically yes, because it remembers all your chats, all
Right.
your session history.
So they're all feeding in there. Okay. Then the intelligence piece, which is the AI, is um is I'm talking to that intelligence, is providing answers, and it knows when to query the vector store or it's querying it every time. So for example, if I ask what's the capital of the United States, it should know that without querying my database, right? So is it deciding when to query the database or no?
Yes, it's deciding, and it's deciding this based on your system prompt, of how well your system prompt is written. And that's one of the issues there. Like, so this solution, what we are talking here, it's the same way how I was trying to build your digital brain when I was doing this from coding. We basically index all your chats into vector store, and then we search for the most relevant content from this from your chats to answer your question. Not only that, but it also was one of the part. And the issue was there that even I specified in system prompt, like you must use this tool to retrieve for the most relevant conversations. Sometimes it was searching it, sometimes not. Like that's why you had this issue. Sometimes it remembered that you drink your coffee with milk and 2 spoons of the syrup, sometimes not, because it was failing to search, to use this tool. And how we can tell AI to use this tool? Like, you need to update your system prompt, or there should be a more intelligent model. And at that time, we used the most intelligent that was in the market there.
Okay. This seems like a pretty shitty solution to me in terms of memory.
Yes, but there is no other way.
It seems like a very crude way of doing it that is never going to be very good.
No, it's going to be good once the model become a little more much smarter.
Okay, well let's go back for a minute. Okay, so we've talked about having different chat windows for different use cases, right? So I guess we could divide that vector store into different use cases. So at least it's queer. Like basically, when I'm on my food diary, it can just look at food diary stuff. It doesn't need to look at anything else for now. In the future, it'd be beneficial, but like if it's not going to work, let's make it really good at food diary memory, right?
Okay.
Is that a potential solution to make this work better or no?
It's the same. Like, AI doesn't know if you're talking, like, for AI, it doesn't make sense if you're talking about food diary or anything else, because the system is the same way. You're building a tool, and okay, maybe we can try this. Because the solution that I built, it had many tools, not just one. And I separated this tool for specific use cases. It had many tools, like it had tools, around 7 to 8 tools there. Maybe we can limit it to only one tool. We can say, okay, here's this tool that's going to, and you can
I,
use it.
really what this goes back to the same reason I didn't want to build a chat system, right? It's like we're not the people, I'm not the person that is going to build some super sophisticated open web UI, right? We never would have, I would never have gotten to where they are right now, ever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Um, so I don't want to build like if we're not, unless there's something specific, like everybody's got to be focused on memory, right? There's no way that we have to start from scratch and say, okay, we need to build something for memory, right? And so we're going to experiment and we're going to try all these different things. It's like, no, like I don't want to be that person. That's not the role that I'm looking to play. Like I want to use the tools that are available, which is why I was excited when I saw Mem GPT because I'm like, okay, here's a bunch of people that put out a paper on memory. Here's a bunch of people that are trying to build memory. Here's a bunch of people that are thinking about this like a human mind. I've heard them talk about. I'm like, okay, why can't we just use this? So let's talk about that.
Yes. Okay. So because we were talking about the solutions, now we have the solution, MemGPT. It does what you want. Like it's the same algorithm that we discussed, a little different, but basically it tries to solve the same issue. Now, how we can integrate this with Open WebUI? And this is challenging. Like we cannot do this. We cannot integrate MemGPT as a tool. We can integrate MemGPT as like using this what the pipelines. No, we can integrate MemGPT only if we update their code base.
Okay.
Because
Then no. Okay. Because I already know the framework for thinking about this. Step one is I want to make sure that we know how to use everything and are using everything that Open Web UI can already do out of the box. Not that we have to change the code, none of that, right? How do we use what's already there and what can be done with what's already there? And I want to do as much as we can with models and tools and functions and pipelines, and let's create examples of things. Let's create videos around that. I will, with your help, and forget about changing the code base. We're not doing it. Then, once we've fully explored the full capabilities of Open Web UI and we know how everything works there, then we can intelligently say, to the developer community, this is what we think you should add, blah, blah, blah. And they can tell us, we'll put that first on the roadmap. Great. We don't have to build it. Or we're not going to do it. And we can say, great, this gives us something that we could add into a custom version of this, like a Red Hat. Right.
okay, with the Open WebUI, they already they store all your chats in database. They are not indexed, they are not converted into embeddings, but your chats stored in database in text form. And it means technically we can run text search, like the normal keyword search, text-based search. It's not semantic search, it's the text search. This is not ideal, and probably it would miss many like conversations, but at least it can also search for the most, like if you're talking about, I don't know, OpenAI, it can search for OpenAI in your conversation history and use this as context. We can build like, I think we can build this tool using the tools or pipelines. I mean, why I'm not certain, because if they will allow to, if they are allowing access to their chat database from this tool component.
Okay.
Technically, yes.
Okay.